Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Alpha School of Music Masterclass with Greg Chin, audio evangelist at Avid, a DJ, producer, a Jamaican, and a great friend of the Alpha Institute first, and now the Alpha School of Music, someone who's been working behind the scenes for a number of years now, helping Alpha develop many of the technology tools that you have access to. Some of you may not have actually had a chance to get your hands on them yet. But you can see what is possible there in the video with Greg sitting in the at his HQ. So as a fan of Alpha and a fan of the music technology, I'm really proud to be able to say welcome to you, Greg, and thank you for all of the help and all of the support that you've given the school over the past, and the students over the past 5-6 years now. And hopefully we get to see you on campus once these travel restrictions are in place, because you're just a short hop, skip, and a jump away.
That's right. That's right. It's a real pleasure to be here, Josh, and everyone at Alpha. Thank you so much for having me. This is a real treat and a real honor. It's been really great to see what you guys have been working on over the past few years, and to see, you know, the growth and the expansion, and hear what you know, so many of the students have been working on. You know, the school has been kind enough to share some of the work, and it's just been really amazing and really inspiring to me. So I am a true fan of Alpha and of all the stuff going on, and I really look forward to coming home and spending some time. So thank you, guys.
Look forward to that. We've got a place ready for you to work and play. Beautiful venue now on campus, so we'll have a big show when you get here.
Awesome.
This is part of the Masterclass series at Alpha School of Music, and on behalf of Kay Magnus, the bandmaster at Alpha, Cleon Samuels, the senior music instructor, and Samantha Williams, Margaret Little Wilson, we're going to get right to it. The format is people are welcome to use. There's a Q&A function in the chat, and students are welcome to drop questions in if they so choose. And if you don't see it, please put in the chat perhaps that you don't see it, and an Alpha staff member will be able to assist. But Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, you're willing to take questions through the conversation.
Yes.
And to all the students who are watching and listening, if you don't get your question answered right away, we will also have a question and answer session at the very end. And so that those of you who might like to know, we are also recording this, and the recording will be placed online so that you can review it if you so wish. I think that's about everything, and I'll get out of your way, so we can get right to the music. That's all right with you. So over to you, Greg. This is Deconstructing the Song with one of Greg's signature productions. And Greg will start talking and sharing with you a little bit about how he uses Pro Tools to make the magic in the studio. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Josh. And again, I want to say thank you to everybody at Alpha. Again, this is a real treat for me. I am so happy to be here. I wish I could be there in person. We'll do that. As Josh said, we'll do that soon. So he also mentioned, you know, as I go on here, you know, please do not hesitate to put some questions if you have any in the Q&A. I will do my very best to keep an eye on it and make sure I answer stuff as we go along. But we will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end. I really wish I could see everybody. This is crazy. But again, thank you for having me. Over the next hour, we're going to take a look at Pro Tools, and we're going to deconstruct one of my songs. But before we did that, I thought it might be kind of helpful to give a little bit of a background. I know I sent a bio in for everyone to kind of have a look at. but since I'm going to be spending some time here with you, I thought it might be a good place to start. So as Josh said, I am Jamaican. I was born and raised in Kingston and Port Antonio, actually. My dad's family is in Portland, and that's where I spent all of my weekends and most of my holidays. And during the week, I was in Kingston. I moved to the States when I was about 10. I won't say what year that was, but I've been here in the States ever since, and I'm still based here in Miami, Florida, where I'm actually home. I'm in my home studio. This is my office and studio, and I've made a really wonderful career out of making music. I'm primarily an electronic music producer and DJ, but music from home, reggae and dub, inform most of what I do musically. So certainly the way I mix my records, even some of the techniques I use in my remixing, I use a lot of dub delays, really a lot of low end. All of that comes from home. So I think that's important for you to know. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of great artists over the years. I've remixed some great artists as well. So some of the more well-known folks are going to be folks like Madonna, Pink, Depeche Mode. But most of the stuff I typically do tends to be more in the underground electronic music level. But I also work here at Avid. I've been here for 15 years. I'm a big fan of technology in general. And music technology is one that's obviously very dear and near to my heart, if you can kind of tell. And I've been with the team at Avid for 15 years. And that's about the same amount of time I've been using Pro Tools. I started off in a different DAW, a different digital audio workstation, and moved to Pro Tools about 16 years ago, 15 and a half years ago, and fell in love with it, and then started working with the team here. My current role is technically the audio evangelist, so I'm kind of one of the people who I'm kind of the face of the company for the audio side of the business. But a lot of things are happening right now, and I guess I'll announce that I'll be taking a new role as a director of music creation for Pro Tools and for audio. So I'm working on a lot of new features and things that will happen in Pro Tools over the next couple of years, which my team and I are all working really diligently on. So I'm very happy about that. So yeah, I mean, alongside that, I'm happily married. My wife is in the other room working, and we have a wonderful 6-year-old daughter. She's at school. We have 2 dogs running around making noise, so I apologize if they get a little carried away when the mailman gets here. But with that, that's a little bit more about me, but this isn't really so much about me. This is more about Pro Tools. So as you know, Pro Tools is the industry standard digital audio workstation. Some of you might have some experience with it already. Some of you don't. Either way, that's okay. We're going to have some fun with it today, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I figure what we would do first is I'll walk you through, give you a little tour of Pro Tools. So at least you have for those of you who haven't had a chance to dive into it yet, this will give you a little bit of the lay of the land, and you can kind of understand kind of exactly where things are as I then deconstruct an actual session or song. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we should see this here in just a second. I'll make sure that we're sharing sound. Okay, so you should all now see my screen, which you should see a Pro Tools window. And just a couple of things. It's not a very big session yet. I wanted to start with something very simple so I could kind of give you a tour. So, and I'll just quickly make sure that we're hearing some sound here as well. Yep, so I can hear it. Hopefully you do too. If you can't, let me know in the Q&A or in the chat, and I'll try and keep an eye on that. All right, so Pro Tools. Pro Tools is a digital audio workstation. It was invented as actually the first digital audio workstation. Any other program that has come since really is kind of, in a sense, modeled after Pro Tools. So if you're familiar with other applications, other DAWs like Apple Logic or Fruity Loops or GarageBand, Ableton Live, Cubase, any number of those, these are all really kind of based on what we are doing, what we've done here with Pro Tools. So it started off its life as a digital recorder, 2 tracks, left and right, stereo only, and evolved over time to be a multi-track workstation. and it has become ubiquitous. It's basically in every single major and smaller recording studio. And we're very happy and we're very proud of that. And it is the best sounding digital audio workstation to this day. And that is scientifically a fact, and it's one we're happy to state. So what I wanted to do is give you a quick overview here. We're looking, I often hear that, and I used to say this myself when I was younger, oh, Pro Tools is great, but it's so hard to learn. I would much rather use something else. And, of course, whatever you decide to use in your career, I'm all for it, as long as you're doing what you love and using the tools that you want to use. That, doesn't matter to me. But I will say that I was very happy to learn myself that Pro Tools is actually quite easy to use. So what we're looking at here is the main window in Pro Tools. This is what we call the edit arrange window. Most of the work you do is going to be in this window. So as you can see here, I've actually got an audio track right here, and I've got some audio. This is basically just a loop that I've put in here. So I'll just go ahead and play that back. Oh, we don't want to hear the whole thing. So we just want to hear the loop. Let's try that again. And we're not hearing it because I have the mixer muted. 1 second. This is the fun stuff. Okay, let me make sure that this comes out here. Okay, now we're good. So that's the loop. All right, very simple drum loop, percussive loop. That's audio, right? So audio track is one of the main track types in Pro Tools. So if you're recording yourself, if you mic yourself up and you're recording yourself, whether you're doing vocals or trombone, trumpet, piano, drums in the room that are all mic'd up, those will be recorded as audio files. So that's what that looks like. The other track type I've put here is what we call an instrument track. Now, an instrument track is basically a MIDI track that also outputs audio. So in this case, I have a virtual instrument, a plugin that this is one of the plugins, one of the instruments that comes with Pro Tools. And, you can actually hear a little bit of that. So I'll just go ahead and quickly just play some keys here on my keyboard. All right, so just a really quick kind of a sequencer percussion part. So, we were able to host both MIDI and audio. So I can show you, I can actually go and record some of this MIDI here, just for the sake of the example, so you can see the difference. So let's go ahead and change the sound actually, and make it something that's a little bit more, a little softer. So let's see, we'll go with Majestic. I'm just going to go ahead and record that really quickly. So you can see that now I've got this MIDI information. These are basically the notes I just played on my MIDI controller and recorded them. So if I go ahead and solo that, if I play that back, we're going to hear exactly what I just played. Now, the cool thing with working with MIDI is that you have a lot of control over it. So in the case of the audio file is the audio file. Of course, I can go and make some changes, and I'll show you how I can do some of that. But the initial audio is going to be what it is. It's going to be that. But with MIDI, because I'm using a virtual instrument, I can actually go in and I can make some changes here. So the first thing I'll go ahead and show you, you have an immense amount of control and power here in Pro Tools. I'm gonna grab these notes and just put them right to the beginning of the track, so we can actually hear it in context as far as time. So the other thing I can do here is I can actually change the sound or build the sound or do whatever I want. I can change the instrument altogether, but in this case, I'll just go ahead and change this to a different sound. So let's say we wanted to do something with let's just say a guitar, something pretty simple. We'll do a mandolin just for fun. So same notes, same exact pattern, but now it's going to be a different sound. Okay, and of course I can, with this instrument, I can add other sounds to it and stack it. So let's go ahead and just for fun, I'll add some additional stuff here. So you have a lot of control when it comes to MIDI. I love using MIDI. Most of my stuff, well, it's a decent combination of both audio and MIDI, but I typically tend to work in MIDI at first before I even record anything in the real world, so to speak. So moving on from there, I'll show you the second window. That's really the other, very important window in Pro Tools. There's really two windows. There are many windows in Pro Tools, but really the main two that you're going to be using most of the time is the edit arrange window and then the mix window. Now, the mix window is basically, if you're familiar with sitting in front of a mixer or a console, this window will look very familiar to you. This is basically a digital representation of the mixer in Pro Tools. Now you see here, we've really have only 3 tracks up, but those are the tracks that I have in my edit arrange window. So I have don't worry about the one on top, that's the whole other session. We have our master fader, which is basically the master volume for the entire session. Then we have an audio track and an instrument track. So once I go over to the mixer, we see the same thing laid out. Instead of it being top to bottom, it's laid out left to right. So of course, if I want to, normally I'll keep my master fader at the end. So I'll go ahead and move it. So if I go back to the edit arrange window, you see that the master fader is now in the bottom because I just moved it. So this is the other window that you're mainly going to be working in. So when you're actually mixing your record, if you have on a console or in using your mouse, you'll actually be able to operate Pro Tools the same way you would an actual console. So I'm going to stop there for a second. I see here that there's a question that came through already, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name. It's Ashan or Ashane Robertson asked if I use Splice. You like Splice for sample and loops. I do have an account. I do use it. I don't use it that often. I do have a couple of other accounts. I have Loop Cloud and a few other bits and pieces. But yeah, from time to time, I do really like Splice a lot. There's so much good stuff there. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Splice, it is basically a product that encompasses a lot of different content that you pay a fee, like a monthly subscription, and you have access to tens of thousands of different loops and sounds that you can use in your tracks. So it's a really great tool, a really great starting point. And yeah, I really dig Splice a lot too. So I hope that answered your question. Coming back to Pro Tools. So yeah, these are the main 2 windows you're going to be working in. Now, like I mentioned, there are other windows that you'll be able to access, but for all intents and purposes, the 2 main ones you're going to contend with most of the time is the edit arrange window and the mixer. So the next thing I wanted to show you and talk through a little bit is the idea of plugins. Now, plugins are basically a piece of software that exists inside of your DAW that you can use to affect the sound, change things, or in the case of an instrument, use instruments. So a virtual instrument is a plugin. So you basically plug in that piece of software on each track, depending on what you want to do. So I'll give you some examples here on this percussion loop. I'll pull up a couple of different plugins that we can use. So here's that loop again, just by itself. All right. If I wanted to go ahead and change the sonics of it and change the frequency of this loop, of this piece of audio, well, I'll probably use an EQ, right, to equalize the sound depending on what frequency I want to adjust. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up just one of the built-in ones here in Pro Tools, and that's EQ7. It's one I use a lot. And you can see here, now I have a plugin, which an EQ plugin here available. So I'm going to let this loop play over and over, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll adjust some of the mid-range, some of the highs, maybe I'll pull out some of the lows, just so you can hear exactly what an EQ basically does. So here we go. So that's it by itself, and I'm going to start punching up the mids. Okay. Now I'm going to increase the high end. I'll pull out some of the low end. So here we are without any EQ. That's the loop by itself, naturally. And then with the EQ, with the plugin on it. So the audio is basically, passing through from the mixer, from the Pro Tools mixer into the plugin and back to the mixer. So we're hearing it with the effect on it. Now, to take that a step further, I'm going to add another plugin right under the EQ. So my EQ, you can see it here in my inserts. I actually have 10 inserts. I can insert up to 10 plugins per track. Now, typically, if you're using 10 inserts on a track, probably need to take a look at what's going on with your audio, because you're probably doing way too much work. Typically 3, 4, maybe 5 is probably what you need. Sometimes you only need 1, sometimes you don't need any. So I'm going to go ahead and add a reverb here, and I'll use one of the ones that's built into Pro Tools. It's actually one of my favorite reverbs, and it's called Deverb. Now, a reverb is basically going to allow me, basically a reverb is an elongated echo depending on the space that you're in. So a reverb will basically, the plugin will basically put this loop in a space of my choosing. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bypass it so you don't hear it yet. And I'm going to add some of the reverb. I'm going to put it in a church. So that's one of the main reverb types. You can see hall, church, plate. And church is a really nice, big, if you think about a cathedral with really high ceilings, concrete walls. When if you sing or you say something with a priest is talking, that's very, very reverberated in that space. So this will do the exact same thing. So here's that loop again. We have the EQs already on there. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the reverb. And of course, when I stop, you can hear that reverb tailing out naturally, right? So now we've got two plugins there. So plugins are a really important part of working with a DAW, and can really, to me, that's one of the biggest parts of fun working on music in a DAW, and certainly in Pro Tools. So I'm going to jump over really quickly to the mix window again, and you'll see here, I'll remove these plugins for a second. You can actually see that the plugins are here in the insert on the track that I have them on. So here on that audio file, the audio track, you can see there, I can pull up the EQ here and adjust as I need to. And there's the reverb. So again, the mixer always matches what you're doing in the editor range window. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna assume that you're now all Pro Tools experts. I'm gonna go ahead and hide these. We don't need these tracks anymore. That was just there for an example. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna jump into the actual session. So before I do that, any questions? I see a couple of things that come through, and yes, thank you. You're very welcome. And I see some greetings, and hello to everybody. I'm going to jump into this session now, and then we'll deconstruct this song. So let me go ahead and expand this. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and I'll play a little bit of it first. We're looking at an actual record. What do I think about the Unison MIDI chord pack? MIDI chord packs are great. I don't know that one in particular. I mean, I do know the company. Because I'm actually a pianist, I typically don't tend to use chord packs just because I can actually play. But I've recommended chord packs to a lot of my friends who are musicians. Maybe they don't read music, and so they're not able to, get their, find their way around a keyboard and find the right chords. So chord packs are a great way to do that. I'm familiar with Unison. I don't use them myself, but they're a great tool. So yeah, that's a really cool one. So we're looking at a record of mine that came out a few years ago. It's a really proud to say it's a very big, popular club record to this day. It's house music is a genre, and it's called Like Records. That's the name of the song. And it was written with a couple of students of mine in LA, in Los Angeles, when I was teaching a camp there a few years ago. And two of the vocalists, the vocalist that's here is a vocalist by the name of Jensen McRae. And the song was written with Jensen, myself, and another vocalist and producer by the name of Raina. Henderson. So Raina, you don't hear Raina's vocals on this record, but some of the production from the original idea came from Raina. So I created an entire song around our writing session in Los Angeles, and I'll play a little bit of it and I'll jump around, and then we'll deconstruct it. So it's audio MIDI, and you'll see that there's some automation in there and a lot of things going on, and I'll walk you through it all. So let me play a little bit of it.
Thinking about you like I'm getting paid for it. You got me spinning like records on turntables, turning me on. You're all that I want. I miss you whenever you're gone.
Or to the break here.
You are what's pulling me through.
So they're in the middle of the song. It's a very long song. It's about, I think, close to 10 minutes long, which for me is short, but for most people, 10 minutes is really long for a song, but it works great in the club. There's a section here in the middle, which is a total breakdown where there's no drums. And what I'm doing is I'm treating the vocal and doing some special effects with it. I'll let you hear some of that.
Records on turntables, records on turntables, records on records on turntables,
And then we kind of build back up from there. Back into the song. There's another verse, and then we build out from there. So how did this all come together? Well, everything started really with the vocal. So I have a question here from Rayon Davis. Sir, you don't have to call me sir, but thank you. How do you sync all the tracks in time? So yeah, I'll actually walk you through that right now. So if you're familiar with tempo, BPM, beats per minute, typically in house music or electronic music, we're going to be anywhere from 120 BPM to about, I'm comfortable around the 128 range. This song is at 120 BPMs, 120 beats per minute. That is the tempo of the song. So you pretty much, typically when you're writing, when you first starting, you're normally choosing a cadence or a tempo as you're writing. So even though I may not typically, like this song didn't start in Pro Tools, it started actually on a piano with just me and the vocalist in a room to kind of working it out. But automatically, as we were writing, we felt the tempo, and that tempo ended up being 120. But if I'm working in Pro Tools, I'll normally choose a tempo to start with. So how do I sync everything? Well, yeah, there's some of that I'll show you. And yes, this is house music for sure. So this song, like I mentioned, started with the vocals. So Jensen McRae, who's the vocalist here, we did record some scratch vocals while we were in Los Angeles in Pro Tools at a studio at the University of Southern California. So those are the vocals that I'm actually using in the record. But I really wanted to build an entire song and groove around the vocal. So when I came back to Miami, I had the vocals. I already knew what tempo and what key it was in. It's in the key of E minor, by the way, if you're interested. And I wanted to build a groove. So I will typically start, especially for house music or electronic music, I will typically start with drums. So if you see here, one of the things I've done is I really try to, I mix everything myself, but if I were to send my session out for someone else to mix, I want to make sure that my session is notated perfectly and well, that everything makes sense. So you can see that I've got color coding here, right here at the top, all of the vocals, I always keep vocals on top. Now you can do however you like it, but this is just the way I choose to do it. So vocals are going to be on the top here, and you can see I've kind of gotten colored in kind of a pink, even down to a little bit of violet on some of that. And I see Eric Thomas has raised your hand. Eric, if you want to write a question in the Q&A, or in the chat. You don't even have to raise your hand, actually. You can just go ahead and write a question in the Q&A, and I'll make sure I'll do my very best to get to it quickly, because I don't believe you guys have access to your mics or anything like that. So if you just type your question, I'll make sure I get to it. So yeah, so I've got everything kind of color-coded and grouped. So the next group here is going to be in more of a blue, and that's going to be my synthesizers, bass lines, things that are going to come from my synthesizers or, plug-in synthesizers. And then red is going to be all my drums. So that's typically where I start. So I'm going to go through that here in a second. And then we've got a couple other things here. So at the bottom, I have this should be green, actually. Let me just go ahead and fix that. So at the bottom is where I normally put my additional effects. Here I've got some white noise that I use musically in the song, and I'll break it all down for you. So first, let's go through the drums. Now, the drums are going to be here, everything in red. So I'm just going to go ahead and solo all of these, and I'll show you how I built it. So what you're looking at here over here, so I've sold everything you see there in yellow. The first track is the plugin I'm using. So I'm using one of my favorite plugins. This is Maschine by Native Instruments. I use it on 90% of my records. I love this thing. It's amazing. So I've got the hardware here, and that's the kit that I'm using in the song. So all the drums you're hearing come out right out of here. Can I make a drill beat? I can. And if we have time, maybe I'll try and do that. We'll see if we have enough time. What's a tight hat? That's Don McDowell. I'm guessing you're asking me. Oh, is that one of the? Is that listed here in the? Tight. Oh, sorry. Yes, in the session. Tight hat. That's just the closed hi-hat. So yeah, I will name things as I want to name them. So I'll actually show you. I'll actually let you hear what the tight hat is. And that's this guy right here. So it's actually more of a shaker, and really what it does, it gives a lot of little body. So if I pair that with the actual hi-hat, you can see that it just adds a little bit more crunch. And then I have an open hi-hat as well. Right, and then I'll start adding all the other pieces. So here's the kick. Clap. Now there's a wood block and a ride. Those don't happen all the time. Those happen only a couple of points in the song. So here's where the wood block happens. And then we have a ride that happens at a couple of points in the song as well. So this pattern actually came directly from Maschine. So typically when I start drums, I will actually program the drum in Maschine, and then I'll drag and drop the MIDI information into Pro Tools, and then I will edit it and arrange it from there. So how do I, Rayon Davis is asking how I find different types of plugins and effects. So yeah, I spend a lot of time on the internet. I spend a lot of time looking. I'm so passionate about music. I'm always looking for stuff. Now I have because I run the team, a lot of the audio team here at Avid. We are friends with all of the developers who make plugins. So they're always letting us know what's new and, hey, check this new thing out. But I do, just like I'm sure a lot of you, I will spend a lot of time online looking stuff up and listening to demos of plugins. And then if I really want something, I'll budget for it and buy it. So yeah, that's probably the same way you do. So Rayon, maybe you can tell me how you find plugins. I'd love to find out how you guys are finding those. And then Timothy Whitley, do you have to create all these sounds? Some of them yes, some of them no. So in the case of these drums, these are all part of, I pulled them in from different kits. So I didn't create any of these sounds. These all come from presets that I've mixed and changed a little bit, but essentially these are all from different kits in Maschine. So I didn't create any of these. Now, There are a couple of the other sounds in the song that I actually did create, but as far as the drums, for all intents and purposes, I didn't create any of them from scratch. But I do sound design and I do create sounds from scratch, and I'll use a synthesizer for that. So that's the drums, and you can see here how this is the sequence. This is the arrangement of the entire song. And here you're looking at, you can see where the kick happens here. Obviously there's no kick here, etc. Here we have the big breakdown. So you can see there's no drums, and then drums start coming back in, right? So Ashan says, YouTube is how I find plugins that are useful to this type of beat I'm creating. Yeah, YouTube is awesome. There's so much great content on YouTube. I spend a lot of time on YouTube as well, checking out plugins and other things I'm interested in. So yeah, that's a really, really great comment. Thank you for that. So yeah, that's drums, right? So I'm going to move on. So Timothy was asking about creation of sounds. So yes, there are sounds that I actually did create for this song in particular. So I'm going to move up here to the synthesizer, the keyboard section. So there are several sounds that exist here. And the main one that when people really know this song is about to be played in the club, it's this sound that they hear. And that is from a synthesizer, a plugin called Ace. This is, I believe the company is out of Germany. The name of the company is Yuhi, and really, really awesome. Now this is a preset, but I have dialed it and totally changed a lot of the parameters to create something, a little bit different. Now, the sound I was actually looking for here is actually based on dub and reggae. I wanted a chord, and this is actually a chord. If I play it here, I'm just going to do, it's a single finger. So it's actually playing a chord with just me using a single finger. That's a really kind of a very normal thing to do in house or techno, is kind of have a stacked chord already, although I could have played it myself. But what I was looking for here was kind of in a lot of reggae, you get a lot of the ska piano, right? And I wanted that kind of feel a little bit, but something that was a little bit more modern. So that's really what I went for in the sound. I can actually, I'll do it here, where I can actually affect the sound where it sounds quite different, but I wanted it to be very present in the mix, but not as present as I actually can make it. So if I go ahead and turn up the modulation here. So I'm keeping it pretty mild, but it can get pretty wild quickly. All right, so that's something I started with, something that already existed and changed it around a bit. And I'll also point out here that I have some additional plugins on here. So the next plugin I have underneath the synthesizer itself is a filter. Filtering is something I do a lot of. So if I go ahead, and I'll just go ahead and actually play it. I don't have to play it on the keyboard. A filter will allow me to affect frequency, kind of like an EQ, but this is going to do it over time. So typically what we'll do with a filter is remove some level of frequency. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I have it set up here. I have a low pass filter, which is going to allow me to let the low end pass through. It's a low pass filter, and basically filter out whatever else I tell it to. So I'm going to use this cutoff knob here to filter it out. So there's some automation that I actually have that plugin actually running and doing some filtering somewhere else, down later in the song. And then I have a delay. It's a very short delay, but if I press a note, it's very, 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 very subtle, but the delay actually helps me to give, some space there in the song as well. And then for additional actual space, I have a reverb. So you can actually see that I've got several plugins happening really to create one sound, right? So what else do we have here? If you want to talk about starting something from scratch, that will actually be this guy. So there's a bass line that actually comes in later in the song, and that's right here. I'll solo that. And that is done with a plugin called Massive. So I created this kind of a square bass tone, very simple, but this is something I did build from scratch, and that's the sound. Very, very simple, but when mixed correctly, that can be really, really nice and big and punchy. When it comes in, you know, I love watching when people smile when the bass line comes in. So I have a couple of things going on there as well. After that, after this, the massive synth, I have an EQ. So this EQ, you can see here, if I look at the frequency from low to high, you can see that one of the things I've done is I've pulled out some of the low end. Well, you're probably thinking, Greg, this is the bass line. You want it to be nice and big and punchy. Yes, but I also have to contend with other elements in the mix. So I have to contend with the kick drum. The kick drum is big and punchy as well. So when the bass line happens, I want to make sure that those two things are not fighting. So if I can remove some unnecessary frequency, I can do that. So I was able to take out some of the really, really, really low frequency on the sound. And then you can see here that I started really accentuating some of the low mids and the mids. So I haven't touched anything on the high end, but certainly on the mids, you can hear it. Now, I'll play it bypass, and let's see if you guys can hear a difference. I'm not sure you'll be able to actually hear it, but we'll give it a shot. So that's the bass line with nothing on it. That's just by itself. And then I'm going to put the EQ in now. So very subtle. I'm listening to this on my laptop speaker, so it's kind of hard to hear, but I can tell you when the kick comes in, it makes a difference, because these things have to work together, right? So let's go ahead and see what else we have here. I've got a couple of other things in the on the bass line. The first thing is the next thing is going to be a sub-harmonic synth. So this is a little bit of a trick of mine, and it's really what we call an oral trick. Because I took some of the low end out, I wanted to kind of make it up without actually bringing it back into the song. So I'm using what's called a sub-harmonic synthesizer. A sub-harmonic synthesizer is a really great tool that allows you to introduce low end, sub-harmonic low end, in any way you choose. So you can see here, I don't really have much of it. You can barely hear it. You can barely, you can see that there's barely anything happening. And if I play it now, you're not going to hear it on your computer speakers. But I can guarantee you, if you go out to a club and you listen to the record there, you're going to hear it. And it allows you to really. So what I've done is I've taken the sub-harmonic synth and kind of spread the low end out around the kick drum. So I get that low end without it interfering with the kick drum. And then I have a compressor. So this compressor is from Native Instruments. It's a solid bus comp, and it is modeled after a very famous compressor, a very famous mixer, a console, SSL, Solid State Logic, out of England. One of my favorite desks to work on. So for those of you who are in audio engineering, and if you happen to be able to sit in front of a console and work with a console, I'm not sure what you're using, but SSL is one of my favorite companies, and I love the sound of their desks. So this is a compressor. Now, what the compressor allows me to do is it takes the entire signal, it takes the entire piece of audio, the entire audio signal, and averages it out. So while this bass line isn't very dynamic, it's just a couple of notes, and they're all at the same velocity, but each note has a different feel and a different attack to it. So what I wanted to do is kind of keep everything consistent, and a compressor allows me to do that. So it'll take anything that is, however I set it, if the signal gets too loud or too dynamic, I can have it pull it down while still keeping the intensity of it. But so I don't lose the intensity, but it's going to enable me to mix this bass line in the song without having to worry too much about the dynamics up and down, right? So I will let you know that bass is the hardest thing in any session to manage, because bass is, as you go lower in the frequency, it tends to be more omnipresent. So it gets into everything. It can, if you're working on a mix and you have it up really loud and nothing sounds right, take a look at your low end. Chances are your low end starts swallowing up all of your mids and high end. So a compressor is a really great tool to use to help with that. So another question that came in here, what does tremolo do? Tremolo is basically just like a vibrato. So it's basically a mechanical way of introducing vibrato. So if you're familiar with vibrato, all vibrato is affecting a signal that is straight. So if it's just a flat signal, tremolo will introduce some movement to it. So if you're a singer and you happen to sing a note just straight, if I added a tremolo plugin, it would basically add some vibrato and make it sound more like So you have that, and I'm not a great singer, so sorry for that, but you get the idea. That's really what tremolo is. It's really, really simple. Yeah, and you have tremolo. I see you got it in GarageBand. Yeah, and it can help to smooth things out. So again, because you're affecting that signal now has some movement to it. If it was just straight and flat, again, now you've got some movement there. Yeah, it's a really great tool that you can use there. Okay, so that's what's happening in the bass line. So I want to move up. Well, I'll just quickly go down here. You can see here that I've got some white noise, and you're probably thinking, noise, why would you introduce that in the song? It actually can really bring some nice texture to a piece of music if you use it correctly. So I will go ahead and bypass all the plugins here. So this is just a piece of audio that I have in the song, and let me. So there it is. And you can hear that it's kind of going in and out, in and out. I had recorded the white noise with that feel, right? So it's basically being sidechained, so it kind of has that movement to it. But that's really all it is. I'll go ahead and I'll introduce all the plugins here. So the first thing you can see here, I've got an EQ. I've taken out, almost everything and accentuating a little bit of the high end. So that's without the EQ, that's with the EQ. And then I have a filter. So there's a point where I kind of break, when you go into the breakdown, where I filter it out, right? And then there's another plugin here that I forgot what I'm using this for. Oh, this is actually what's doing the side chaining. So if I turn this off, now you hear the white noise all the way through. So I'm using this plugin to do that kind of pumping, ducking effect, which is called side chaining. So Rayon Davis wants to know, how do you know when the plugin is drowning the sound, and the different types of plugins for each track or instruments? Great question, Rayon. So basically, when you go to mix, if you feel like you're starting to lose control of the mix, what I always recommend doing is muting everything and starting back with the low end and introducing different pieces. So if you feel like you're losing your high end, start with your low end. So maybe it's your bass and your kick, and then go reintroduce that track or those tracks that you feel were kind of being affected, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. I would say 8 out of 10 times, really the problem is that we tend to mix too high. So we get to the mix and we're like really jamming, and we're turning everything up, and we're pushing faders up and making everything louder and louder and louder. At some point, you're going to run out of bandwidth, meaning you're going to run out of space, out of oral space to be able to make things happen. And there's no more bandwidth. So things have to start going away. So low end will start just eating stuff up, and you're going to try and then turn up your high end, or turn up your EQ or turn up the volume. And you're basically going to get into a situation where you're distorting your entire signal. So a really good thing to do is to mix soft. You can come back up, you can get a good balance of your mix, and then bring everything up after, which is actually the right thing to do. So I hope that answered your question. We can maybe address a little bit more of that a little bit later. So with just a few minutes left, I wanted to then go into a couple more things here. Why most music uses trap hi-hat? Trap hi-hats are awesome, and they're basically mostly coming from a Roland TR-808. That's probably the most famous trap hi-hat. And trap snares, yes, trap snares are everyone's using them because they sound awesome. So those for trap in that genre, a lot of those samples that you're using, the hi-hats, the snares, they're samples from other things, but they've been treated in such a way that they have a very specific sound to them. I love the way trap snares sound. Trap hi-hats I don't use as much, but I'm using a lot of the same hi-hats. I just treat them differently. But yeah, trap snares are super dope. All right, I'm gonna move up to the vocals. Okay, that's Josh talking to the students. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move up to the vocals here. To me, this is the most fun part to work. I mean, the whole thing was really fun to work on, but I love working with the human voice. I love working with vocalists, and Jensen is amazing. So I'm gonna zoom into the vocal here, and you can see exactly what is going on. So you can see here, I've done quite a bit of editing on the vocal. Yeah, Jensen did a lot of great takes, and really what I've done is what's called, I've done a comp. So I've taken all of the time, she sang it probably 6 times, 5 or 6 times. And from those times, I basically took what I felt were the best pieces of each take and comped it. So I have, I'll just solo this part here, and I'll take the effects off so we hear it totally dry. Yeah, starter edit has to stay on.
Thinking about you like I'm getting paid for it. You got me spinning like records on turntables.
So that was one part, and then I pulled another piece from the first verse from another take.
Thinking about you like.
So I'm basically creating the entire song from different takes, right?
There's something about you.
I love Jensen's voice. Now you'll see here that I have a double underneath. So that's basically an effect, and I love doing this manually. Usually I'll take a different take and put it underneath and create a different comp. So you can actually see this is a little bit different. So it's her singing with herself, basically. This is really super popular in hip hop. That's actually famous everywhere. I mean, you know, you hear it in pop, you hear it a lot in hip hop. And it's, you know, a lot of times you won't even notice that it's happening, but now you're going to hear the difference. So I'm going to add the double here.
I'm getting paid for it. You got me spinning like records on turntables, turning me on. You're all that
So that's
I want.
just her by herself. And then when I add, I'll add the double.
If only I could get you all alone.
So it gives the whole song, it gives the whole vocal a lot more body. Now I'm going to go ahead and start introducing some of the plugins I'm using. So I have look, it's a filter. I'm using a filter here as well. That happens not on the main vocal, but it happens in the breakdown where I start doing all the special effects. So that's a lot of fun. Next up, I have an EQ. Now the EQ here is taking out, again, some of the low end, and that's going to basically reserve that low end for, you know, anywhere else I might need it. I'm putting a little bit on the mids, and I want the high end to shine and be brighter. So I've got an EQ. You know, the EQ is happening more on the high end. So
I want to feel your body in my
a lot
arms,
brighter, right?
my arms.
Without
Loving you has been the easy part.
All right, simple but very, very, very effective. And then I have a compressor. So you know, you can probably tell by looking at the waveform. Jensen is a very dynamic singer. So you can see here, you know, these are the softer sections, and then you can see as they kind of start peaking, you know, there's a lot of that happening. So it's very dynamic. So the compressor helps to keep everything kind of managed and consistent. Did I record it in Pro Tools? Yes. I try and do all of my audio. I mean, I do use other DAWs, but for all, yeah, Pro Tools is I use it 100% of the time. I do play around with other DAWs and I love them. But yeah, when it comes to recording, everything has to be done in Pro Tools because it's going to sound best there because of all the conversion, all of the science behind how we capture audio in Pro Tools. It's you know, I won't say magical, but yeah, it's magical. So I have the compressor on the vocal. So let me go ahead and turn that on.
I'm getting paid for it. You got me spin.
Now the other thing you'll hear automatically is that compressor allows me to turn that whole vocal up. So now I have it consistent, and then I can bring it up, right? Sean wants to know, do I use an Akai MIDI keyboard or an Ovation? So I use both. I normally travel with an Akai, but here in the studio, I have an Ovation SL MK3, and I have a Native Instruments Complete Control S49. So those are the ones I'm using here in the studio. Okay, so yeah, compressor allows me to kind of build that back up, and then reverb, right? So that's going to help give some space.
Like records on turntables.
So you can hear a little bit of a tail. I'm using a hall reverb there. Now, oh, what's the better one? That's so subjective. Whatever you like is the one that's the best. So, you know, I love them all. I think they're all excellent. So I'm not going to try and pick one. That's up to you, Clan. You tell me. Okay, the last thing I'll quickly show is the master track here, right? So my master is where I'm doing my mastering for me. Now, typically you're not supposed to, you know, master your own stuff, and you're not supposed to master using the master fader, but I break rules a little bit, and I think that's okay to do because it's music. So on the master, I'm going to move over here to the mix window, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk through quickly my my plugin choices here. Pull this up. Oh, come on, mouse. Oh, hang on a second. Let me move this window out for a second so I can resize it. There we go. All right, perfect. So on my master, I have a few things going on. I have an EQ again, and you can see all I've done here is pulled a little bit of super sub low end out. That's to let the track breathe. I've also added a very small amount of reverb. That allows me to put the entire song in a space and kind of glue things together. You don't hear it. This is really working in the background. And then I have a really important tool to me because I'm a DJ, and a lot of times, most clubs I'm playing in, the tops will be stereo, but the bottoms, all the woofers, the subs are all mono. So it's really important that I manage that low end. This plugin is Monofilter by a company called NewGen. It's one of my secret tools, and I use it to help me in a session. So what this is doing, it's taking all the frequencies that I tell it to take from this frequency, from a certain frequency down, and just automatically turn it to mono. That way, when I play it in the club, I know it's already going to be sounding proper and good. And then I'll test it for radio as well. But club is, for me, is where the most important thing. So I use that. And then I have a multi-band dynamics tool. This is a limiter, but I'm really actually using it kind of like a compressor. So a limiter is it is a kind of compressor, but this is actually, I'm using it as a way to kind of you know, really turn things up. And it's multi-band, meaning I can address, in this case, 4 different bands of pockets of frequency and treat them differently. Instead of it just being the whole thing, I can treat 4 different bands of it separately. So let me show you what that sounds like. First, I'm going to go ahead and take all of those bypassed. Let's bypass those. And let's listen to some of the track here. We'll go into this section here. Oh, of course, it would help if I take that out of solo. All right. So that's the mix. This is how I mixed it. That's what the mix sounds like. And let's see here. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on all my plugins on the master. So a lot punchier, a lot bigger, and I do all of that in the master. Now, before I do any of that, I make sure I have a really good mix. One of the worst things you can possibly do is start putting stuff on your master bus and mixing with all that stuff on the master bus, because then you're really leaning on the plugins there. Don't do that. Come up with a great mix, use your ears, and once you have a good solid mix that you're really happy with, then you can look at you know, putting some stuff in the master and adjusting things as you need to. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Yeah, we're three minutes past, and oh yeah, so Ashan wanted you guys to know that Novation feels a little bit better, and mostly because of its drum pad. So yes, my SL does have a drum pad on it, which my daughter loves to use. I don't use it because I use my Maschine, but it is excellent. Yeah, it is awesome, and I do love it. I just try not to choose favorites because I'm also friends with all of these manufacturers, and if they hear that I preferred one over the other, they're gonna have some words with me. So, but you know, you use what's best, what feels best to you, and that's the thing with controllers or pianos or your instruments in general. You always have to use what you feel works best. You want to have a relationship with your tools, whether it's a drum machine, a digital audio workstation, a MIDI controller. You know, you want it to feel want it to feel good. So just because your friend says something's great, if you use it and it doesn't feel great to you, well, then don't use it. Use the one that's, use the right thing for you. So with that, I don't know, I'm happy to take any other questions that you guys have and answer anything you want. I don't know if Josh, how you wanted to do that, if we just continue using the Q&A here. And I'll, as stuff comes through, I'll answer them. So Rayon Davis, where in Pro Tools do you find the sounds and plugins? Because I'm new to the software. Great question. So you will find them in your inserts. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll hide all of this again so we can kind of start from, make it a little simple. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up, let's say you're starting a brand new session and you want to find your plugins. So I'll go ahead and I'll pull up a empty stereo track. Okay, so here it is. So I have nothing in here. There's no audio in here or anything, but I have my inserts here. So I will let you know that when you first install Pro Tools, it's going to be laid out differently. You get to lay out Pro Tools however you like. This is my preferred way. And I like seeing my first 5 inserts because I usually never go past 5 inserts or 5 plugins on one track. So if you just click this little chiclet here, this little upside down triangle, that allows you to do a couple things. Well, this allows you to change the size of the window. But if you want to actually change the layout of your edit arrange window, this chiclet here, this little rectangle with the lines and the upside down arrow. So whenever you see an upside down arrow, it means that there's a menu hidden underneath. Now in most, that'll be the same for most applications. So, and it's certainly the case here. So you can see upside down arrow, upside down arrow, upside down arrow. So wherever I click that, there's going to be a menu that's going to come up or some level of information for you to choose something. So here it is. If I want to change the layout of what I see in my edit arrange window, I click that and you can see everything that's available to you. So in my case, I'm looking at inserts A through E. That's the first 5 inserts. Now, if I wanted to see all 10 of them, I can do that. I can see all 10 of my inserts. And that's where you're going to find your plugins. So close that out, go back to my audio track here. You can see I'm looking at my inserts A through E and F through J, 1 through 5 and 6 through 10. If I click one of the inserts, it's going to then tell you or ask you, well, what do you want to do now? This is listing all of my plugins. So I have my plugins listed by type, which is right up here. So you can see I can look at my plugin types from EQ to dynamics, which are things like limiting, compression, things like that. Pitch shifting, reverb, delay, modulation. So tremolo would be in here. Harmonic. So, things that will change the harmonic structure of a tone, etc. Right? All the way, they're all my instruments, etc. I also have them listed in by the name of the company because a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of times we'll think about the plugin by the company name. So a lot of time, you might think, oh, I want to use Isotope Ozone. A lot of people might just say Ozone, but a lot of people will know it as, oh, it's that Isotope plugin. So this way you can kind of quickly find it by looking at it that way. Now I'll show you a trick, something we added in Pro Tools that makes looking for your plugins even easier. And that is when you click on an insert, when that menu comes up, you can actually just start typing the plugin you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking for Ozone. I can just start typing, oops, of course I should spell it right. Start typing Ozone and everything populates with that name. So there it is, Ozone 9. If that's what I'm looking for, then I can just click it and then it's going to pop right up in the session once it's finished loading. All right. So there's Ozone. Very, very simple, right? So I hope that answered that one. Let's see. Oh, yes. Sorry, let me go back to the question on the inspiration of the song. Let me look at that question. What inspired the instrumentation and the arrangement of this track? So yeah, great question, Cleon. So for me, when I was in LA, Los Angeles, working, I was teaching a music camp, and one of them was Raina, was my student. She was in my electronic music production class. She's a rapper, a singer, wicked trap beat maker. She's awesome. Raina Henderson, if you can't, look her up online. She's amazing. She decided that she wanted to write a song, but she needed a vocalist. She didn't want to sing it herself. So I said, well, there's a student in one of the vocal classes. Her name is Jensen McRae, and she's got a great voice. And I think you two would hit it off. So why don't you, go talk to her? So she did. They came to me and said, we think we have something, but we need help. So I said, okay, let me hear it. So we booked a little time in a piano room. They gave me a very quick idea, and I was like, dope, it's awesome. So, and then, in my mind, I was starting to hear something, different. They're not club, they're not house music producers or fans. So I kind of brought up the idea, and then they said, well, why don't we write it together? So we then wrote it as a club piece. It started off as an R&B piece, by the way. But I really felt it should be house. So that was the initial inspiration. When I after the camp was over, we'd already recorded Jensen's vocals, and then the rest was up to me. I brought it home, and for me, I was looking for something that was just big in the club with a really nice vocal. That was going to be also very simple. So you can see it, the session, there's not a ton of tracks there. A lot of my records will have way more tracks, but this one was very simple, and I wanted to keep it nice and open, but still big. So that was kind of the inspiration. As far as the arrangement, I fell in love with the groove that I created, and I just wanted to hear it more. So that's why the song became so long. Luckily for me, everyone agreed, and to this day, it's I shouldn't say it myself, but I'm told that it's considered a club classic. So I'm very, very, very happy and very proud about that. So let's see. I hope that answered your question. Mr. McDowell, hello. He wants to know what books are available now from Avid. And yes, nice meeting you too. And I really look forward to meeting you in person. That'll be a great joy of mine. So books, yes, there are some books that are available. We are actually just about to launch a new series. So we have what we call our Pro Tools certification books, and they're enumerated, and they basically take you from scratch, from setting everything up all the way through your chosen career path. So Pro Tools 101 is where everything starts, and everybody, that's how I learned a lot of my Pro Tools chops came from that book. And then from there, we move up to Pro Tools 110. That's a bit more advanced, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. I've learned a lot from there. And then we start moving up into different, the 2 series. And then when we get up to the 3 series, things start moving out. So depending on your choice of career path, if you want to be a producer, there's a path for that, with the certification and the books. If you want to, if you're looking to be an engineer, or specifically live sound, that whole other series that then works on that certification. So we are reworking those books right now, and they'll be out relatively soon. I will mention though, those will typically be a part of a curriculum, but you can get them and do it on your own. I will say that there's a lot of other great books that we didn't write. So you can check out. I don't know who distributes in Jamaica, but you can check out some of the Hal Leonard books. There's a ton of great stuff, a lot of great Pro Tools books that are out there. And actually what I'll do is I've written 2 books that I didn't write them for Avid. I actually wrote them for Hal Leonard. I co-wrote them with a gentleman by the name of Glenn Lorbecki, who's an amazing American record producer and a great teacher as well. And he asked me to co-write a couple of books with him. I have digital copies of those books. I will send those PDFs. I'll have to dig them up, but I will send them to Josh and Mr. McDowell and make sure that they're available to you guys free of charge. Okay. So there's a lot of great stuff in there. Some of the stuff I covered here, there's 2 different volumes, and I hope that you will be able to get some good stuff out of that. So I'll make those available as PDFs for you guys. I don't have physical copies of the books, but everybody likes looking at stuff online on the computer anyway. So I'll make sure I dig them up and send them out. Josh, please do remind me to do that, and I'll have to just jump into the archives and find those. So I hope that answered that. is there any way we can have more sessions like these? I think that's one for Alpha. And I already know the answer is yes. You guys will be doing more sessions like these. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So yes, thank you. Thank you, Don. Part two, yes. Well, yeah, I'm happy to come back at any time. One of the things I actually did want to do it, we're not going to be able to do it today, is I actually want, I'm in the middle of a dub project. Again, I'm Jamaican, and dub and reggae is such a huge part of my life. I make that music as well. So I'm actually working on a dub project, and I wanted to share that with you guys, but it's not quite ready. And maybe next time we can run through some of that, and maybe we do some of the trap stuff, and we can do some of the drill beat stuff. So I'll let everyone at Alpha work that out, and I'd be happy to come back. So any other questions? So I'm going to grab a sip of water here. No, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I have a question.
Sure.
This is Joshua. I'm not sure if everybody else can hear me, but you may need to repeat the question. But
okay.
It sounds like your music background includes some theory and some practical experiences into a music performance. Is that the case?
That is the case, yes. So I started playing the piano when I was 4. It started back home in Jamaica, and continued that education when I moved to the States. So piano is my main instrument. And then I did attend, I've been, theory is a part of that. I mean, I've been doing theory since the start. I went to a music school, both for junior high and some of high school as well. I was required to have a second instrument. So I decided I didn't want to have another instrument to take something around. So I decided voice was going to be my second instrument. So I sing as well. That actually came in handy. Well, not the voice thing in particular, but the knowledge, the music knowledge, all the theory, being able to play, and I also play by ear. All of that came in handy when I got to college, and was able to get a lot of experience as a session musician for people who didn't read music or know how to comp things. I was, and I was cheap, so I was the guy that they would call to come into studios and help them out. So that was having that music theory and knowledge under my belt was very helpful. So.
It sounds like it, and I think that's what I'm curious, because there is no theory class that necessarily comes with technology, but it seems to be a help to you when you talk about dynamics and you talk about these things that musicians and people who play instruments do.
Yeah,
it seems like that is a helpful skill to understand.
It is a helpful skill for sure. And I'll just add something to that, which is, if you're a musician and you don't have much, technical experience on the audio side, it's okay. Everything you're used to as a musician, your terminology, crescendo, decrescendo, forte, piano, the engineer should automatically know what that means. So while the terminology might be different, so if you say, well, I need a crescendo, or I need this to be forte here, they're thinking, well, the dynamics need to be louder. But different languages somewhat, but you guys are going to be, you'll understand each other pretty immediately. So, don't be afraid.
At the same time, students, musicians learning the theory and the crescendo now will make them a better engineer if that's what they choose to, the path they choose to follow.
Absolutely. I think I had no intention of ever becoming an engineer as well. I wanted to stay a musician and a performer. And as time went on, I became more interested in it. And I felt that at some point, I should know this. So yeah, it did make things certainly a lot easier, making that transition and adding that to my skill set. So yeah, being a musician certainly absolutely helped, because you automatically have the air. And especially if you're in band of some sort, you're dealing with a ton of different dynamics, not just yourself, but of those around you. That all comes into play if you're behind the desk and you're now engineering. You have an innate sense of what that should be already, and that's huge.
Well, on behalf of the students here, and I see Mrs. Wilson writing, thank you as well. And we all feel the same way, that there are 21 Alpha students participating right now. You've got the Alpha School of Music students. You also have Alpha Institute students, future Alpha School of Music students included, hopefully. And I'm sure you'll get a chance to speak with Shane and Rayon and Timothy and all these guys again, and meet Mr. McDowell and meet Mr. Samuels and meet Ms. Magnus. So we're looking forward to having you back.
As am I. And again, thank you. Thanks to all of you for having me. This is an honor for me. I really, really appreciate you, letting me be here and spend some time.
We look forward to doing this in person. I know that the vibe is really up right now on campus. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the ideas and the insight and the tricks and tips, and looking forward to showing you what they can do, what the students will do with all of these tools. I see Mr. Robertson doesn't want to leave with asking one more question. So one last question, which is the best way to
Let's have it.
Mr. Robertson.
What can I do to create melodies with ease? So I'm going to ask you a question, and do you read music? You can say no, it's okay. Or do you play an instrument? Do you play keyboard at all, or any instrument? Play the trombone. Okay, perfect. What can you do to create melodies with ease? Play your trombone. So typically, you probably have a curriculum, and a theory-based curriculum, a music-based curriculum for your trombone lessons. So you're probably reading music, that somebody else wrote, and you're practicing that, and you're learning it and getting better, and getting better. Great. Spend some time as you practice, and you can do it before you get into that or after. Just noodle. Now, when I say noodle, that basically means just take your trombone and just play it. Don't worry about the piece of music in front of you. Just find notes that feel good to you. And that's how you start writing music. That's how you start finding melodies. I wrote my first melody when I was I think I was 10. And it just came. I just was at the piano, and at that point I was used to playing by ear or reading music, nothing else. I wasn't trying to create music. And one day I just happened to be noodling on the piano, and I came up with this little thing, and it became a thing. It became a song. It was the first melody I ever wrote, and that just came from me. I know where all the notes are, and you know where all your notes are on the trombone. So just start experimenting. Experiment with notes. Experiment with time. Maybe try a few triplets, just going up and down, and then maybe go into a cadence of quarter notes, and then eight. Combining it with eighth notes. Just experiment. That is the best way to create melodies. And then, it's the same thing like working out in the gym where you're building up your muscle. The same thing, practicing your trombone. You're going to get better, and it's going to become second nature. I mean, I can literally sit here at the piano without even thinking about it while I'm talking to you, and just come up with a melody. And that could come from just me doing that. So do that. And then next time I'm here, I'm going to ask how it's going. I expect a good answer. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
No, thank you.
That's a great way to finish. Even it's not a finish, it's another beginning. So thank you for giving us all of these beginnings.
No, thank you guys again. Truly, truly, truly honored. And you guys are doing some great work. So keep it up.
Well, it's times like this that really give us some inspiration. So the feeling is mutual, and we really give thanks for your time and your knowledge.
No, thank you guys. We will see you soon, and till next time.
Till next time. Take care and stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Cheers.
You.
Bye.
Bye.